guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I'm going to go over an article that is definitely going to make the green-haired sisterhood lose their freaking minds, which is titled, Conservative Young Women Flip the Script, Kids First, Then Career. And guys, this article comes from the Wall Street Journal. It was published yesterday, November 22nd. And just like the title says, you know this is going to get a reaction. As it turns out, after decades and decades of the playbook of, hey, women can be just like guys, have careers, and also have families, and have kids, and have it all. It turns out many are realizing it's just not the case. And a lot of women out there are very unhappy when they realize they get to their 30s and they can't do that. And so now some conservative young women out there are flipping the script and going back to how, let's be honest, how things always were. And they're putting family first in terms of marriage and kids, and then going on to career once the kids are old enough, all that. And I'd be very going to go over here, guys, to show you that clearly we were right all along. We're not just a bunch of sexist jerks pointing out the obvious, but, you know, the green-haired sisterhood has a powerful lobby. And no doubt they're going to be losing their minds about this whole thing. And real quick before I get into this, I'll say this. Some people that may stumble upon the channel seeing this article, seeing this video, might say, what does a guy who has a men's channel, men's community, who does videos in his car, care about women, you know, choosing to go back to, let's be honest, how they were designed, as opposed to career and all that? Why would I care? Am I some sexist jerk? Am I some jerk that says they're taking the men's jobs? Well, I'm doing this because many of you have learned over the decades the damage to the nuclear family here in the West, thanks to the bowel movement, or that movement, and the green-haired harpies putting out the idea out there that, the gals should be just like guys. Look what it's done. Look at the divorce rate. Look at the destruction of the nuclear family. Look at so many kids out there growing up in single-parent households that need both a father and a mother. It's a big mess, and it's about time people start to realize the damage is caused and simply doesn't work. I know a number of women who got to their 30s, did the same thing that they were told, and it was a very, very uphill battle to do it all. And some couldn't do it all, and many are like that. And they then froze their eggs, and then eventually did use medical science to have a baby in their 40s, and they're not happy. So, starts off, says here, seasons is the new buzzword for those starting a family earlier in life and focusing on professional advancement later. For generations of women, the logic has seemed airtight. Focus on a career in your 20s and worry about starting a family once you are established in a job. That has been the playbook for decades, and it has not worked out well for many young women out there. This mindset has capitulated women into higher earning positions and into traditionally male-dominated fields. The share of women in the prime working years who are in the workforce is around a record high. And women are having babies later, if they have them at all. The answer to fertility constraints, they're told, is egg freezing. That really started picking up about 10 years ago. I know a couple gals that had their eggs frozen that were in their mid-30s. And who benefits from that? The companies that do offer those services. And let me tell you something, because I knew a gal that did this, specifically, she spent a lot of freaking money. This is a decade ago, to have the eggs taken out, frozen, stored, all that. Isabel Brown, 28, didn't want to wait. She married last year and had a baby this year. She's now building her career as a conservative activist, hosting a podcast for a conservative media company, The Daily Wire, and speaking on college campuses as a representative for Turning Point, the youth organization Charlie Kirk co-founded. Okay, not every gal out there is going to get married, have kids, and then start their own podcast and do this. But the point is, someone here is going a different route. Kirk's widow, Erica Kirk, now leads the organization and is amplifying a message especially resonant for young conservative women. Family is central. Children come first. She says young people are realizing that our lives are going to be so much more meaningful if we have a family to share our success with. From the start, Brown said, and she and other conservative women talk about timing family and work as seasons of life. The term is from the biblical passage, Ecclesiastes 3, chapter 3, verse 1, for everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. Many of the women who view their lives in this way would say they think of themselves as existing between the extremes of traditional wives who treat caring for their homes and families as a more permanent full-time job, and girl bosses who center their lives around work. Well, there are women out there that actually, I'll be honest here, have zero interest in marriage or kids. Or they might want to marry a guy that's, to be the power couple. A guy like her and not have kids. And if they want that life, okay, fine. But a lot out there do want to have family and kids one day. And when they follow the script that's been for decades, they end up deeply unhappy. It's a mess. And then what they do is they get to their 30s, they panic, they get married to the wrong guy, or wrong guy for them, and certainly wrong girl for him, or they feel so entitled to a guy that at the very least matches their education, income, all that, and they wait forever because nobody's good enough for them, and then it's a big mess. Or the ones that do get married because they're rushing things too quickly in their 30s because the biological clock's going crazy, doesn't work out. Divorce and more kids in single-parent households. As recently as 15 years ago, a self-described conservative and liberal women. Let me start over. As recently as 15 years ago, self-described conservative and liberal women between the ages of 18 and 35 were having kids at around the same rate, according to an analysis from a large national study called the General Social Survey by Samuel Perry, a sociology professor at the University of Oklahoma. But in recent years, the gap has widened. His analysis shows, as of 2024, roughly 75% of liberal women in this age range were childless, compared with around 40% of conservatives. In 2010, the difference was only 5 percentage points. That is massive, but that doesn't surprise me at all, and I'm sure it doesn't surprise any of you guys. He says here, liberals are leaning hard into the dinks. Dual income, no kids, being childless or having fewer kids, and as being very much a choice. Whereas for conservatives, having kids is still very much a part of what it means to be a whole person, Perry said. Well, again, this doesn't surprise me. Having kids doesn't preclude workforce participation, and plenty of liberals are still putting a priority on parenthood. But as birth and marriage rates fall, some conservatives are doubling down on the importance of starting a family. Again, guys, I can't remember if I said this in the beginning of the video, but I'll say it now. This is very interesting, and I think this is a very positive development. But do I expect there to be a 180 change tomorrow? Not a chance in hell. If you decide not to work or not lean in the first 10 years of being a mom, and you do that in your 20s, there's still plenty of time to start working in your 30s and have a meaningful career, said Carrie Lucas, the president of Independent Women, a right-leaning public policy organization focused on women's economic issues. Exactly. They can go to school, whatever that is, in their 20s, and then focus on the marriage and family and all that. And then down the road, if they get married to the right guy, they have kids, and then when the kids are old to go to school, can have careers down the road. The problem is that, how can I say this? If women do the opposite, where they're waiting to the 30s to focus on family and everything, the prime birthing years, if you will, are really behind them. Yeah, you can have kids in your 30s, but it's much more challenging. And don't get me started in the 40s. At a conference for conservative college women in Scottsdale, Arizona last month, speaker after speaker, including Brown, encouraged the 100 gathered women ages 18 to 22 to pursue careers and education, but not at the expense of marriage and children. Look, I'm going to say this. There are some young women out there that have no interest in kids. Okay, fine. You know what? They shouldn't have kids if they don't want them. But for the ones that do want that, they need to understand that, the problems and challenges trying to stick to this idea of what is not working, I'll have them later on in life. People realizing it's not working. Reagan Conrad, who hosts the Comment Section, a podcast for the Daily Wire, discouraged egg freezing. If we as women are putting our eggs on ice for a decade to make sure that our career is thriving, she said, we have a prioritization problem. Not to mention money problems. You know how much money that costs to extract the eggs? The whole process there, and to freeze them and store them for all those years? KT McFarland talked about leaving her job in public affairs at the Pentagon at 34 years old to raise 5 kids and deciding to return to the workforce after 9/11 when she was 50 years old. The former Fox News analyst served as President Trump's deputy national security advisor in his first term. Kimberly Begg, president of the nonprofit Claire Booth Luce Center for Conservative Women, which was hosting the event, told the audience that Gen Z is the loneliest generation. because members of that demographic group are part of a smaller and more fractured families. See? Fractured families. Where do you think it's all coming from? Begg also said they've been told lies such as faith and family hold you back. That's what they've been told. And you got women that are older that are coming out and saying, no, it was a mistake. The 49-year-old says she regrets putting her travel-heavy job as general counsel at a nonprofit over the needs of her 5 young kids earlier in her career. Do you hear that? One of my daughters learned how to use the phone, and she called me constantly because she wanted me to come home. Begg said in an interview after the conference, my children were not thriving. Kids need their parents. End of freaking story. She decided to quit that role after seeing how the big-eyed beanie babies she brought home as souvenirs for her daughter after each work trip had taken over her room. After 5 years at home, during which time she wrote 2 nonfiction books and advised nonprofits, Begg joined the Lucy Center in 2024. A few months after she became president, she shifted into in-person office hours, which they call collaboration hours, to end at 2 p.m. to accommodate mothers picking their kids up from school and other family priorities. She says children and marriages and families need more than just loving thoughts, said Begg. They need presence, and these hours allow me to be present with my kids while I'm engaging in meaningful work. Okay, she's finding a way. Again, is it always as easy for everyone? Of course not, but the point is you find a way. She saw the damage it was by her not being around for her kids, you know? A lot of people lose their minds about like when topics like this come up. I've covered so many stories where the woman has the higher paying job and the husband becomes Mr. Mom. And you know how that turns out almost all the time because he takes on the traditional feminine role and she takes on the traditional masculine role. They start losing attraction for each other, resentment builds, and guess what? They get divorced. And it's a bad situation for the kids. It's always better at the end of the day if the husband is working and doing the traditional male role. I know I'll be labeled a sexist, but I don't give a shit. I'm nearly 50 years old. I don't care if anybody calls me anymore. She encourages the students she mentors to look for the flexible work arrangements that have become common post-pandemic. She says, you can have everything you want, Begg says, but you can't have it all at once. Well, I wouldn't agree that you can have everything you want. But I do agree you can get a lot of things you want over time, but not necessarily everything. Grace DeMars, a 21-year-old senior at California Baptist University who attended the conference, recently got engaged to her high school boyfriend. She's been trying to reconcile her aspirations to become a history teacher with her desire to start a family in her mid-20s. Her mother, who had her at 39 years old, warned her about how much harder that late pregnancy was than her previous 3. Right there. Now I'm going to stop here for a second and mention something because I'm sure some of you guys are thinking this. A lot of you guys have heard me say over the years that I wouldn't recommend a guy getting married till his probably close to 30, late 20s. And then you might say, well, how is this all possible if you're saying that? Well, because the guy's older. That's why. And ideally, his fiancée and wife is younger. And therefore, she's in her early mid-20s when this goes down. And ideally, they've known each other for a while before this happens. She says, I've come to terms with what is more important for our children and for our family, says DeMars. Especially as a teacher, it's not like I can just clock out and go home and not take my work with me. As a young mother and policy analyst working remotely for conservative think tank, the Heritage Foundation, 28-year-old Emma Waters is both living and researching the season's approach. She has a fast-paced coalition-building role when she and her husband decided to have kids so that she could be home with them. Now ages 2.5, 11 months during the day. Since then, she says she's turned down other in-person career opportunities that she would have otherwise enjoyed. See? She's putting the kids first. She says, I love my work, but my top priority is to raise my kids, and that cannot be outsourced to someone else's for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Is it really 8 hours a day and 5 days a week? No, it's not. The you can have it all mindset is so misleading and sets women up for disappointment right there. Exactly. You can't have it all. And the ones that claim they do and they're happy, they're full of shit. She knows that not every woman can work remotely and that living on a single salary isn't an option for many families. That's very important. She also doesn't prescribe her family's approach as a singular ideal, acknowledging that seasons look different for everyone. In her work as a policy analyst, she's advocating for more financial support for married, working families, in particular, alongside the social support systems we have in place for single-parent families already. Mostly, however, she thinks it is in the culture that needs to change to make it easier for people to fit their work around their families rather than the other way around. The answer is more community support to find flexible work for young mothers, Waters said. Well, one definite thing to make this possible is more remote work. A lot of these companies that refuse to adapt to the new normal, to how things have changed, in terms of the way I see it, if somebody can do their job working from home, let them. You know how much money is saved on having a smaller office facility, amongst many other things? Somebody working from home, I know a number of people that have worked from home since 2020, or at least maybe the majority of the time. They get way more done, not to mention it's better for their families. They save plenty of money on gas, wear and tear on their cars. They can have, the washer and dryer going on behind the scenes, the dishwasher going, something in the oven, and they're there when the kids come home from school. They make it work. So why these companies are so hell-bent on having them in the office, it's ridiculous. Obviously, there are certain jobs you must be there at all times. And people babble on, it's not fair. Well, it's not fair. But the way I see it, it's more cost-effective for a business to have people more efficient working from their homes, if they can, and they're happier and all that. Okay, if they come in maybe once a week to meet up with the team or something, okay, but the point is, yeah, I'm for that. Not just for business efficiency and people's happiness, but also helps with, that way you can have a household can have two incomes, and the kids are more attended to by mom and dad. Anyhow, it goes on here, says, in post to her roughly 2 million, mostly young Instagram and TikTok followers, Turning Point Representative Brown asks, why wait for marriage and parenthood? It's not true that walking down the aisle or welcoming a child into the world will somehow limit your personal freedom, she said. Brown records her show for the Daily Wire from her house in Washington, D.C., and often brings her daughter to the speaking engagements she travels to around the country. Her husband, Brock Belcher, that's the last name, Belcher, who works in communications for the Trump administration, shares child care responsibilities for their daughters, Isla, with the exception of breastfeeding, Brown joked. Their experience as a young family, Brown said, differs from the message she thinks a lot of young people see how they should structure their lives. She says, we are looking around at the anti-family state of affairs in our country, Brown said, and realizing that for the most part, people aren't happy or fulfilled. They're not. That's the whole point. But again, the green-haired sisterhood has been a powerful force over the decades, and they've been pushing this thing on all platforms. TV, movies, radio, books, magazines, social media, I can go on and on. And people are realizing it's just simply not working. Now, is it a black and white situation and you go to the other way, it's going to be perfect? No, but you find ways. End of story. And again, I don't expect there to be a 180 change tomorrow, but the point is some people are waking up to realize this. And the sad thing is articles like this are going to make the green-haired sisterhood lose their mind. They'll probably label women like this as betraying women, or ruining what so many fought so hard before. Well, clearly this isn't working, what's been going on. So I'm glad to hear this, but again, we shall see. But I thought I'd go on to point out here today. All right, guys, that's it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. And be sure to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe. I'll catch you next time.